Hey guys, tonight we begin with something wonderfully mundane, yet surprisingly captivating. A gentle wander through the sights, sounds, and smells of a medieval marketplace. We're trading the drama of battles and the intrigue of royal courts for something far more humble, yet equally fascinating. The everyday commerce that kept medieval society alive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. It's a crisp morning in the year 1347, and you're approaching the gates of a bustling medieval town. The sun hasn't quite burned through the mist that clings to the cobblestones, but already you can hear the gentle murmur of commerce beginning to stir. Wooden cartwheels creak along stone pathways, roosters crow from hidden courtyards, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimes the hour with that deep, resonant tone that seems to settle into your bones. You're not here for grand adventures or political intrigue. Today, you're simply going to market, just like thousands of other people did on thousands of other mornings across medieval Europe. Nothing dramatic, nothing earth-shattering, just the quiet rhythm of trade, barter, and daily survival that form the backbone of medieval life. As you pass through the town gates, the first thing that strikes you isn't the sight, but the smell. It's a complex mixture that would seem overwhelming to modern senses, but to medieval noses, it was simply the scent of life itself. Fresh bread mingles with the earthy aroma of root vegetables. The metallic tang of iron from the blacksmith's forge drifts on the breeze. Somewhere, someone is cooking meat over an open fire, and the smoke carries hints of herbs and fat. The marketplace itself unfolds before you, like a patchwork quilt of human activity. Wooden stalls line the central square, their awnings made from rough canvas or wool cloth that snaps gently in the morning breeze. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven, worn smooth in some places by countless footsteps, still rough and treacherous in others. You watch your step, mindful of the occasional puddle or less pleasant obstacle that medieval sanitation has left behind. The vendors are already setting up their wares, and there's something almost ritualistic about the process. The baker arranges his loaves in neat rows, each one a slightly different shade of brown depending on the grain used. Some are made from wheat, a luxury that commands higher prices. Others are fashioned from barley or rye, dense and dark and filling. The cheapest loaves contain whatever grain could be stretched furthest, sometimes mixed with peas or beans, to make the precious flour last longer. Next to the baker, a woman spreads out an array of vegetables on a rough wooden table. Turnips, onions and cabbages form neat little pyramids. These aren't the perfect uniform vegetables you might see in a modern supermarket. They're irregular, some scarred by weather or insects, but they represent sustenance and survival. Each one was carefully tended, harvested, and transported to market. Each one tells a story of seasons, soil, and human labor. The cloth merchant is perhaps the most colorful presence in the square. Bolts of fabric in various stages of completion hang from wooden frames or lie draped across tables. Most are practical woolens in shades of brown, grey, and undyed cream. Wool was the foundation of medieval textile production, warm and durable, if not particularly soft. But here and there, you catch glimpses of something more exotic. A length of linen, pale and smooth. A small piece of silk that seems to shimmer with its own inner light, probably traded from distant lands through a network of merchants you can barely imagine. The process of setting up stalls is unhurried but purposeful. There's no electric lighting to flip on, no refrigeration to worry about. Everything depends on the rhythm of the sun and seasons. Vendors arrange their goods to catch the best light, to protect them from weather, and to display them in the most appealing way possible. It's marketing and merchandising in its most basic form, refined through generations of trial and error. As the morning progresses, the square begins to fill with customers. They arrive in a steady trickle rather than a rush. Some are local townspeople, recognizable by their familiarity with the vendors and their casual manner. They know exactly where to find what they need and likely have ongoing relationships with particular merchants. Credit and trust matter in a world where coins are precious and bartering is common. Others are clearly from outside the town. Farmers who have travelled from surrounding villages, carrying produce from their own plots or livestock to sell. Their clothes are rougher, more practical. Their hands show the calluses and stains of agricultural work. They eye the town's offerings with the careful calculation of people who must make every purchase count. The negotiations that follow are quiet affairs, far removed from the dramatic haggling you might see in movies. Prices are discussed in low voices. Quality is examined with experienced fingers. A housewife hefts a loaf of bread to judge its weight and freshness. A craftsman inspects a piece of iron for flaws or impurities. Everything is personal, immediate, tangible in a way that modern commerce has largely lost. Children weave between the stalls, some helping their parents, others simply absorbed in the theatre of adult activity. They're not idle observers. Many are learning the skills they'll need as adults, watching how their elders evaluate goods, negotiate prices, and conduct the social rituals that accompany every transaction. Commerce isn't just about exchanging money for goods. It's about maintaining relationships, gathering information, and participating in the complex web of community life. The sounds of the marketplace create their own gentle symphony. Coins clink softly as they change hands. Wooden wheels creak as carts are repositioned. Voices murmur in the local dialect, discussing prices, weather, and neighborhood news. Someone's dog barks briefly before being hushed. A baby cries and is quickly comforted. These aren't the sharp, urgent sounds of modern life. They're the slower, more organic rhythms of a world that moves at the pace of human feet and horse-drawn carts. As you wander deeper into the market, you begin to notice the subtle hierarchies at play. The most prosperous merchants have the best locations, usually closer to the center of the square, or near important buildings like the church or town hall. Their stalls are larger, their goods more diverse. They might sell not just one type of item, but a variety of related products. A successful cloth merchant might also offer thread, needles, and simple garments alongside raw fabric. Lesser merchants occupy the periphery, sometimes selling from baskets on the ground, rather than proper stalls. Their selections are smaller, their goods more specialized or seasonal, but they're no less important to the functioning of the marketplace. They might offer items that larger merchants can't be bothered with, or they might serve customers that the established vendors overlook. The medieval marketplace wasn't just about commerce, it was about information. News traveled along trade routes, carried by merchants who might have journeyed from distant towns or even foreign lands. A vendor selling spices might also carry tales of events from far away. Political developments, weather patterns, crop failures or successes, the rise and fall of local lords. All of this information flowed through the marketplace like a medieval internet, passed from person to person through casual conversation and deliberate inquiry. The pace of transaction here moves with deliberate care. Unlike the hurried exchanges of modern commerce, each purchase involves careful examination and quiet contemplation. A customer picks up a clay pot, turning it slowly to inspect the rim for chips or cracks. The potter watches patiently, ready to point out the vessel's strengths or acknowledge its minor flaws. There's no pressure, no artificial urgency. Time itself seems to flow differently in this space where quality matters more than quantity. The money that changes hands tells its own story. Coins are fewer and more precious than you might expect. Many a length of rope, adding a few small transactions, involve barter or partial payment arrangements. A farmer might trade eggs for copper coins to make up the difference. A housewife exchanges a basket of apples for candles, with the chandler throwing in an extra stub because the fruit is particularly fine. These aren't desperate negotiations between strangers, but ongoing relationships between people who expect to see each other again next market day. As the sun climbs higher, the character of the marketplace shifts subtly. The early morning rush of essential purchases gives way to more leisurely browsing. People linger longer at stalls, engaging in conversations that have little to do with commerce. The blacksmith pauses in arranging his tools to discuss the weather with a regular customer. The baker's wife shares news about her sister's new baby while wrapping a customer's purchase in rough cloth. The social fabric of the community is woven and rewoven through these casual interactions. Marriages are arranged through casual conversations between parents. Apprenticeships are negotiated over shared meals. Business partnerships form through repeated encounters and growing trust. The marketplace serves as the town's living room, a space where the private concerns of households merge into the public life of the community. Religious observance threads through the commercial activity like a quiet undercurrent. Many vendors begin their day with brief prayers, asking for divine blessing on their trades. Small shrines or crosses mark corners of the square, and you notice people making quick signs of the cross as they pass. When the church bell chimes the hours, conversations pause momentarily as people acknowledge the passage of sacred time within their secular activities. The goods themselves reflect the rhythms and limitations of medieval life. Everything here was made by hand, often by the person selling it. The shoemaker who displays his wares knows intimately how each pair was constructed, which leather was used, and how long the shoes should last under normal wear. The carpenter selling wooden bowls can tell you which tree provided the wood and why he chose that particular grain pattern. This personal knowledge creates a different relationship between maker, seller, and buyer. Seasonal variations add their own texture to the marketplace experience. Today, in late autumn, root vegetables dominate the produce stalls. Apples, recently harvested, are carefully sorted by quality and size. The last herbs of the growing season are bundled and hung to dry, filling the air with the scent of thyme and rosemary. Winter preparations are evident everywhere. Firewood is stacked in neat piles. Preserved meats hang from hooks. Thick woolen goods take precedence over lighter fabrics. The clothing worn by market-goers reflects both practicality and subtle social distinctions. Most people wear variations of similar basic garments, but the quality of cloth, the fineness of weaving, and the presence of small decorative elements mark differences in wealth and status. A merchant's wife might wear the same basic dress pattern as a farmer's daughter, but hers is made from finer wool and dyed a richer colour. A successful craftsman's cloak might feature better stitching and a fur-lined hood. Children's voices add a lighter note to the marketplace symphony. They play games between the stalls, dart between adult legs on mysterious errands, and occasionally help with family businesses. A young boy tends a flock of geese while his father negotiates with a customer. A girl of perhaps 10 years carefully counts coins for her mother, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. These children are learning the skills of commerce and community through direct participation rather than formal instruction. The smells continue to evolve as the day progresses. The morning's fresh bread gives way to cooking food as vendors and customers alike pause for midday meals. Someone has lit a small fire behind one of the stalls, and the smoke carries the scent of roasting meat and onions. The metallic smell from the blacksmith's area grows stronger as his forge heats up for more intensive work. Herbs and spices create pockets of intense fragrance as customers examine their quality by crushing small amounts between their fingers. Weather plays a constant role in market life. Vendors eye the sky for signs of changing conditions. A few clouds might send them scrambling to cover sensitive goods with leather or cloth. Rain would transform the marketplace entirely, turning the packed earth between cobblestones into mud and forcing everyone to adapt their routines. But for now, the autumn air remains crisp and clear, perfect for the unhurried business of daily commerce. The variety of dialects and accents creates its own gentle music. Most conversation happens in the local tongue, but occasionally you catch fragments of other languages. A travelling merchant from a distant region speaks with an accent that marks him as foreign, though not unwelcome. His exotic goods, perhaps salt from coastal regions or iron tools forged in a city known for metalwork, attract curious customers who examine his wares while struggling to understand his speech. Animals weave through the scene as naturally as people. Dogs follow their masters, occasionally receiving scraps from friendly vendors. Cats lurk around food stalls, hoping for spilled grain or dropped morsels. Horses and oxen, tethered at the edge of the square, stamp and snort as they wait for their owners to complete their business. A few chickens peck at scattered grain, apparently belonging to no one in particular, but tolerated as part of the marketplace ecosystem. The pottery stall draws your attention with its earthy, practical beauty. Clay vessels of every conceivable size and purpose sit arranged on rough wooden planks. Cooking pots with rounded bellies and sturdy handles. Water jugs with narrow necks designed to minimize evaporation. Storage crocks that will hold grain through the winter months. The potter, an elderly man with clay permanently embedded under his fingernails, runs his hands over each piece as he describes its virtues to potential customers. His craft represents one of humanity's oldest technologies, yet here it feels immediate and vital. Each vessel was shaped on his wheel, fired in his kiln, tested by his own use before being offered for sale. When a customer asks about a particular pot's durability, he doesn't quote statistics or warranties. Instead, he taps it gently with his knuckle, producing a clear ring that speaks of properly fired clay and sound construction. The leatherworker's stall occupies a corner position, and you can smell the tanned hides from several paces away. It's not an unpleasant odor, just distinctly animal and earthy. Belts, purses, and simple shoes are displayed alongside strips and sheets of raw leather for customers who prefer to do their own crafting. The leather itself tells stories of the animals it came from and the processes used to preserve it. Some pieces are soft and supple, clearly from younger animals and intended for fine work. Others are thick and tough, destined for heavy use in workshops or fields. A small crowd has gathered around the spice merchant, drawn by aromas that seem almost magical in their intensity. His wares are modest by the standards of larger cities, but even these few precious substances represent trade networks that span continents. A small cloth pouch contains black peppercorns, each one worth its weight in silver. Another holds coarse salt, perhaps carried from distant coastal regions where seawater is evaporated in shallow pans under the sun. The spice merchant handles his goods with the reverence they deserve. When a customer asks to examine the pepper, he carefully pours a few corns into her palm, watching as she rolls them between her fingers and inhales their sharp fragrance. These aren't commodities to be grabbed off shelves. They're precious substances that have traveled farther than most people will ever go, passing through the hands of countless traders before reaching this humble marketplace. Musical instruments occupy a small but enchanting corner of the market. A lute maker has brought several of his creations, their polished wood gleaming in the morning light. The instruments aren't merely functional objects, but works of art. Their curves and proportions pleasing to the eye, even when silent. A young man picks up one of the lutes, testing its weight and running his fingers across the strings to check their tension and tone. Music flows naturally through medieval life, and these instruments will provide entertainment, accompaniment for dancing, and solace during long winter evenings. The lute maker demonstrates his craft by playing a simple melody, his fingers finding the frets with practiced ease. The music draws listeners from other parts of the market, creating a small circle of appreciation around his stall. The herbalist's table presents a different kind of magic. Bundles of dried plants hang from a wooden frame, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. Small clay pots contain powdered roots and bark, each labelled with symbols that mark their intended uses. This is medicine as it existed before chemistry and pharmacology, based on generations of observation and experimentation with the healing properties of plants. Customers approach the herbalist with specific complaints or general concerns about health. A mother asks for something to ease her child's cough. An elderly man seeks relief for aching joints. The herbalist listens carefully before selecting particular herbs, often mixing them according to recipes passed down through family lines or learned through long apprenticeships. The fishmonger arrives later in the morning, his cart loaded with the previous day's catch from a river several miles away. Fresh fish is a luxury in inland towns, and his arrival creates a small stir of interest. The fish are displayed on beds of wet reeds, their scales still bright and eyes clear. Customers poke and prod to test freshness, and the fishmonger good-naturedly defends the quality of his wares. Preservation is a constant concern in a world without refrigeration. Some of the fish have already been salted or smoked, extending their useful life, but changing their character. The saltfish will provide protein through winter months when fresh catches are impossible, but they require soaking and careful preparation to become palatable again. Tools and implements occupy several stalls, representing the fundamental technology that makes medieval life possible. Hand-forged nails, each one slightly different from the next. Knives with wooden handles and carbon steel blades that will hold their edge through years of use. Agricultural implements designed for specific tasks and crafted to fit human hands and bodies. The toolmakers often work metals that have been recycled multiple times. Iron is too precious to waste, so broken implements are returned to the forge to be reshaped into new forms. A worn-out plowshare might become knife blades. A damaged sword could be reformed into everyday tools. This recycling isn't driven by environmental consciousness, but by economic necessity, in a world where metal represents concentrated wealth and labor. Games and toys appear sporadically throughout the market, usually carved from wood or bone during winter evenings when outdoor work becomes impossible. Simple dice made from animal bones, wooden tops that spin with the flick of a finger, carved figures that might serve as toys for children or good luck charms for adults. These objects represent leisure and play in a world where both are precious commodities. They're crafted with care despite their simple functions, often incorporating decorative elements that serve no practical purpose beyond beauty. A wooden horse might have a carved mane or painted eyes, details that transform a simple toy into a small work of art. The rope maker's stall showcases another fundamental technology. Coils of hemp and flax rope in various thicknesses hang from wooden pegs. Each strand represents hours of work, twisting individual fibers into strong, flexible lines that will secure loads, operate simple machines, and bind together the wooden structures that house medieval life. Rope making requires skill and strength, and the rope maker's hands show the marks of his trade. Calluses from handling rough fibers, stains from the oils used to preserve hemp. His knowledge encompasses not just the mechanics of rope production, but the properties of different materials and their suitability for various tasks. As midday approaches, the marketplace reaches its peak activity. Conversations become more animated as people encounter friends and neighbors. Children dart between stalls on errands for their parents. Dogs weave through the crowd, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting smells or beg for scraps. The church bell tolls the noon hour, and some vendors pause their work to offer brief prayers of gratitude for the morning's sales. Others begin preparing simple meals over small fires built behind their stalls. The scent of cooking food adds another layer to the complex aromatic tapestry of market life. Money continues to change hands in small amounts, but the transactions represent more than mere commerce. They're social bonds, expressions of trust, and investments in ongoing customer experiencing temporary hardship. A buyer might pay slightly more than necessary for goods from relationships. A vendor might extend credit to a regular, a friend's stall. The medieval marketplace operates on human scale and human time. There's no artificial urgency, no pressure to maximize efficiency at the expense of social connection. People take the time needed to examine goods properly, to negotiate fair prices, and to maintain the relationships that will sustain them through good times and bad. This gentle rhythm of commerce continues as the sun reaches its zenith, casting shorter shadows and warming the autumn air. The marketplace hums with quiet activity, a testament to humanity's endless ingenuity in creating systems of exchange that serve both practical needs and social bonds. The afternoon brings a different quality to the marketplace as shadows begin to lengthen and the urgency of morning purchases gives way to more leisurely encounters. Vendors who have completed their primary business for the day settle into comfortable positions behind their stalls, content to chat with passers-by and tend to the occasional late customer who wanders through with specific needs. A travelling tinker arrives with his cart laden with metal goods that clink and rattle with each movement of his horse. His wares represent the intersection of necessity and repair in medieval life. Dented pots that can be hammered back into service, knives that need new handles or edges restored, simple metal clasps and hinges that hold together the wooden infrastructure of daily existence. He sets up his portable anvil and begins the rhythmic hammering that will mark his presence in the square for the remainder of the day. The tinker's arrival creates its own small theatre. Children gather to watch him work, fascinated by the transformation of bent metal into useful objects. Their parents appreciate his services differently, seeing solutions to problems that have been accumulating in their households. A cracked kettle that still holds water but threatens to fail completely. A door hinge that squeaks and binds. These aren't glamorous repairs, but they represent the difference between functional and dysfunctional daily life. Nearby, a woman spreads out an array of candles on a rough wooden table. Some are simple tallow dips, made from animal fat, and providing basic illumination for those who can afford little else. Others are beeswax, burning cleaner and brighter, but commanding prices that put them beyond the reach of common households. A few specialty candles incorporate herbs or coloured wax, intended for religious ceremonies or special occasions. And so, our gentle wander through this medieval marketplace draws to its quiet close. The afternoon light fades slowly over cobblestones worn smooth by countless footsteps, and vendors begin the unhurried process of packing away their wares. There was no drama here, no great revelations or earth-shaking events. Just the steady, reassuring rhythm of human commerce that kept medieval society alive, one small transaction at a time. Perhaps that's exactly what we needed tonight. Sometimes the most profound stories are found not in the grand gestures of history, but in the simple act of buying bread on a Tuesday morning. Sleep well, and thanks for joining me in this quiet corner of the past.